All right. Hey, so welcome to lesson 3 of representing decimals. Okay, so let's go into what is our lesson objective for today. So, our lesson objective is that today we will represent decimals using base 10 blocks, right? So, we're going to go ahead and represent decimals using base 10 blocks. All right, so let's go ahead and look at what is our vocabulary, right? So our vocabulary for this lesson is the first one is to represent. So if you remember, what does represent means? It means to show something in some way. So we have all these different ways that we can represent for. We have our number form, our word form. We have some base 10 cubes, some dice. We have all these different ways that we can represent for. All right. So now let's go into decimal. So what is a decimal? A decimal is a fraction with a denominator that is in a power of 10 and is written with digits to the right of the decimal point. So basically what a decimal is, it is a part of a whole. It means we don't have the whole thing. We just have a part of it, okay? So in this case right here, it's separated into 10 pieces. So anytime we go into our next decimal place, that means, oh, okay, just like we go ones, tens, hundreds, we move by 10, we go backwards the same way too. So if we have tenths, that means we have 10 pieces of a whole. If we have hundredths, we have 100 pieces of a whole. So let's go ahead and go into what is a tenth, like we kind of talked about before. So a tenth is a portion, an equal part of a group of 10, right? So we took our whole right here and we split up into 10 pieces. So that is a tenth. Now, if we go into what a hundredth is, if you remember me talking about earlier, a hundredth is one part of a whole that is divided into 100 equal pieces. So we have our whole, which is our big flat right here, and each of these little squares is 1 out of 100. So there are 100 little squares. So we took our whole and we split up into 100 little pieces. Okay, so now let's go into our last one, which is really, really important when we're talking about decimals and just math in general, is place value. So what is place value? Place value is the value of a digit based on its location in a number. So a digit would be your numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And those are all your digits, right? And then depending on where we put them tells us how much is it worth. So for example, if I were to put 7 in the hundreds place, that would mean we have 700. But if I were to put that same 7 in my millions place, right, that would mean that I have 7 million, right? So if I put that in my millions place, we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. That would be our 7 millions. That changes the value of our number. So based on where we put our digit depends on how much our number is worth. Okay. All right. Now let's go on to our next one. So our last lesson, what we did was we represented 1 and 27 hundredths where our flat was the whole. So this is what it's going to look like, right? So we had one whole, which is right over here. That's equal to 1. And then we had 2 tenths because we took that whole and split up into 2 pieces. So we had 2 tenths and then we had 7 hundredths, which are representative of our units right over here. Right? So we did that. So we represented 1 and 27 hundredths using base 10 blocks. Now, what would happen if we change what our whole represented or what represented our whole? So before, in our last example, we had a flat, our hundreds flat, which represented our whole. And this one, we're actually going to change it. Oh, I'm so sorry. And this one, we're going to change it to a cube. So what would happen if we make our whole our cube? So that would mean that my whole is 1,000 cube, right? Now, how many do I have as a whole? How many wholes do I have? I have 1, right? I have 1 whole. Great. Now, we got to go ahead and see, okay, so we have 1 whole. Oh no, why aren't you erasing? There we go. Okay, so we have 1 whole. Now we got to go into, okay, we have 1 whole and then we have 2 tenths. Now, if our cube is equal to 1 whole, that means, okay, I have to split my whole into 10 pieces. In order for me to do that, if I were to split this cube into 10 pieces, that would actually make a flat. So because if we get 10 flats, which are like our hundreds flats, that's going to make 1 cube. So to represent our 2/10, we actually need to have a flat. So, and we need 2 of those. So I'm going to represent it like this, right? So we have 2 flats. Now we have to go over to our next place value, which is our hundreds. So we have 7 hundreds. But we have to remember, okay, if our cube is our whole, then that means we have to get 100 of these whatever we split it into is going to make 1 whole. Or another way to think about it is we had our tenths, right? So if we split up whatever our tenths are into 10 more pieces, that's going to give us our hundreds. So we have our flat. I know 10 rods makes 1 flat. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I know 1 10 rod is going to make is a flat cut up into 10 pieces. I need 7 of those. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? So what I have here is I have 1 whole. That's what this is representative of. So that is my 1 whole. Now I know I'm going to cut up all these other pieces, right? And I have 2/10, and because our thousands cube is our whole, that means we have to figure out, okay, how can we split up our thousands cube into 10 pieces to represent 1/10, which is going to end up being our hundreds flat. So we have our flat here. We need 2 of those. Then we need to take a step further and say, okay, now I need to split up my hundreds flats into 10 more pieces to figure out how many hundreds I have to represent that. So that means I'm going to have 7 of those. Right? 7 tens rods. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is how we represent 1 and 27 hundredths when a cube is our whole. All right. So now let's go ahead and see, did we meet our lesson objective? So our lesson objective for today we will represent whole numbers using base 10 blocks. Now we did not represent whole numbers. I made that mistake last time too. We represented decimals. Oh gosh, so sorry guys. We represented decimals, okay, using base 10 blocks. All right, so if you need to rewatch this video again, make sure you do your activity and then come see me when you're ready for the next lesson. Okay, fantastic. Have a great day. Bye-bye.